The time has finally come to start watching for free mowers, so keep your eyes open and you might just get lucky. So the spring mowing season is only a couple of weeks away, and even though you're not going to be doing any heavy mowing, it's about time to get them out and ready for the season. However, this is also when most mowers are pulled out of storage only so that you can decide if it's time to get rid of them and get a new one. In today's video, we take a look at this very poor example of a Poulan Pro lawnmower, and the problem is that it was picked up as trash, and the reason why is pretty clear. Now, this mower was at its prime about a decade ago, and ever since then, well, it's been rotting away outside in the dirt. Now, I've already fixed this mower, and if you want to see that video, there should be a link to it at the top of the screen or at the end of the video. And I'm just going to be using this video as a background while I talk about picking up free mowers to fix and flip, but I'm also going to be talking about the problems that you pick up as well. I'm not sure if you know anyone who's able to make a decent living by picking up free items to fix and flip, but with the way the economy is headed right now, it's becoming a more viable option versus when things were a lot better. Now, back then, you used to be able to buy a simple 20-inch push mower for less than $100, but I hate to tell you what they're selling for right now, and don't even get me started on what a regular self-propel mower is going for either. Now, the reason why gasoline mower prices are going out of control is because it makes a simple battery mower look a lot more appealing. So you don't believe me? Okay, let's take a look at the current market prices then. Now, at the local big box hardware store down the street from me, the cheapest gasoline push mower is sized at 20 inches and has a tiny Briggs engine on it, and it costs just shy of $300, while the cheapest battery mower comes in at an even smaller 18 inches and is $50 less than the gasoline one I just mentioned. Now, I know $50 doesn't sound like much of a difference, but to some consumers who might be struggling to pay their rent, well, that's a lot of money. Now, as for the comparison of the self-propelled electric versus the gasoline one, there was a $50 difference, but it was instead in favor of the gasoline one. As for the reason why that is, I can only guess they haven't been able to lower the prices for the parts to make the electric version a better option. However, it's just a matter of time before the difference will work in favor for the battery version, so enjoy it while you can. Now, because of the way the market is, finding old and discarded mowers that consumers have given up on to fix and sell just makes sense. Think about it. Every home in the city limits that has grass on the property needs to be cut during the mowing season. That means the chances of that home having one, if not more, lawnmowers on it is pretty high. Of course, there's always a chance that some of the homes might have a lawn service to take care of it for them, but there's still a chance that that home might have a lawnmower in the garage that's not being used. That means every home has the potential to have a working, or in this case, a non-running mower that might just end up on the curb ready for anyone to pick up. And when that happens, it's your chance to pick them up, fix them, and make quite a bit of extra money on them. But there is a huge problem with this business model, and that is you expect every mower that you pick up for free to be repairable, but as you can see, that might be a bit of a problem. Not every one of them can be saved for one reason or another, and the problems are more varied than you think. The first problem can be the lack of parts for the machine, and that's because the machine could be simply too old. Yet another reason would be, in the case of this particular mower, it needing so many parts, and despite the parts being fairly cheap, it yet again would not be a profitable investment. Now, the last reason I want to mention is something that most would never really think of, and that is it may not be a brand that anyone would even want to buy. Now, believe it or not, there are some brands out there and even certain models that are undesirable to most consumers. That means even if you were asking almost nothing for it, it may not interest anyone to buy it. So you don't believe me? Well, that's okay. Let me give you a good example. Now, nothing against Yazoo mowers, but the older ones from decades ago don't seem to sell very well in my area. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, Yazoo used to make these large brush cutting mowers that had what looked like bicycle wheels in the back and either used a vertical or sometimes horizontal shaft engine on them. Now, most of them looked like something from the industrial age and looked very unsafe to use, so most don't get sold or even picked up for free. The reason why is that most that find them can't see themselves using it, and even if they were going to sell it, know that it's going to be a very tough sale. Basically, it's a very odd looking mower, and even though they haven't looked into getting any parts for it, you know it's just going to be difficult to get. In fact, the last one that I saw in the marketplace in my area has been posted for quite a while now with no signs that it's going to sell. So you might be saying that the price is too high and that's the reason why it's not selling. Well, I hate to admit it, but it's actually below market value, so it's a decent buy if you need a walk-behind brush cutter. Now, the problem is that if I was going to use a brush cutter, I'd like for it to be on a tractor and not something I have to walk behind. Also, this area is just a bit too urban for this type of machine, so the amount of people looking for one is going to be quite small. So what other problems can you run into while doing this kind of hobby then? One of the least likely things that could happen, and this is based upon my own experience, is of course finding a machine that's not repairable. This mower is the best example of that very issue, and it's been haunting me ever since I got it. Now the worst problem with it is that the mowing deck is cracked, which means there's not much I can do for it. Now the most common response I've gotten so far about this mower is to just use it as a parts machine, but there is still one huge problem with that choice. Let me explain that reasoning by going down the parts list and why I have an issue with them. The first part and the biggest one would be using the engine for a different mower project. The reason why I have an issue with it is because the air filter wasn't prepped correctly and was allowing a lot of dirt to make it inside the engine. That means the cylinder walls and the piston rings could be worn down and needing some serious attention. Also, the oil level was extremely low and there could be a lot of internal wear that I'm not aware of. Well, what about the wheels then? Unfortunately, the tread on the front tires are pretty much gone, and even if I swap the tires front to back, I still won't have a full set that looks decent. Now, the best part that looks to be salvageable is the transmission. However, those are fairly model specific, which means I'd have to have almost the same model to swap it into. Of course, the smaller and cheaper parts like the blade, the adapter, coil, and carb are still good. However, it's not very often that I need one of those parts. Now, the only part that in my mind is worth a lot is the fuel tank, but you might not think the same way, which is perfectly fine. I don't know if you noticed it, but I did forget to reconnect the spark plug boot to the plug. But despite that, it looks like the spark was able to jump over to the top of the plug. I am going to try that again, only this time with the boot on, and see if it runs a whole lot better. Now, as you can tell, this engine doesn't sound all that great, more like a rock tumbler, but it might be useful in the future. Now, if you do try to pick up a mower up for free, just be very careful because what you end up with might not be a good thing. And in fact, might be more than you bargained for. Now, this doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, it's a real wake-up call reminding me that fixing stuff isn't all fun and games. Now, don't let me deter you from trying it out yourself, but my only advice is don't be surprised by what you pick up, only be thankful, otherwise sell it as is and make a buck or two. So my question is, have you ever picked up something that turned out to be a real piece of work and you basically had to get rid of it? Oh, and this question doesn't have to be about lawn equipment either. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.